Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dashcoin Research Podcast, your source for all things internet capital markets. Today we have Adam with us. Adam is the founder of Star.Fun, a new launchpad that is focused on vetting founders so we have quality projects to choose from. Adam, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Was that intro I gave pretty accurate? Would you say that, that's what you're building here?
Yeah, definitely. I think I can expand a little bit on the vetting process, so that's clear, and then we can get into the why and everything from there on out. So we built a verification system that analyzes a founder's GitHub profile, their public and private history, without being invasive, of course, it's read-only. And we use that to build a sense of signal on if a founder is a capable builder, and there's a certain passing grade that if you don't make it, you don't get to raise, and that grade is also shown on the website, so investors can see that too.
That's pretty sick. I like that idea. So right now you're focused on GitHub, but you also have plans to expand to other social signals, right?
Yeah, so the MVP is GitHub, and then from there we're looking to basically use AI to build an entire much like a VC or an angel would do due diligence on a founder by looking at their LinkedIn, their GitHub, their X, any articles that are written about them, basically anything you can find online. And then getting to the nitty gritty, we can also start to analyze like product videos. Let's say like you're doing a screen recording of your product. We can look at the depth of that. We have a really total AI nerd on the team, so we're trying to push this as far as we can.
How big is your team?
We're 3 full-time, so a designer, I'm like a builder, founder guy, and then a developer, and then we have a videographer and a community lead as well that's doing outreach to founders.
Nice. Yeah. Sounds super interesting. Can you tell me more about like the raising part of that? So is it going to be like kind of how on Believe where you just launch a token and you get like fees, or what does the Launchpad facilitate? Like specifically.
So the pitch to founders is to raise stablecoin through a public token sale. Basically, the way it works is you create a token, you host a public sale. That's in 2 options. You can do a bonding curve or a pro rata sale. Everyone's quite familiar with the bonding curve mechanism, but with us, the way that it works is once the bonding curve hits a certain price, like a target price, you've completed your raise, and you get, it's more or less 80% of the raised funds, with the rest going to create an AMM, like a continuous market maker for your token that isn't along a exponential price curve, it's a linear one. So that one people are mostly familiar with, but it's an innovation on the pump fund model, for example, in the sense that you actually raise USDC. You don't just get a token that you then have to OTC or sell somewhere else in order to raise money. And then we have the pro rata sale, which I find particularly interesting because you can basically have a 7-day sale in which investors can contribute funds at any moment. At the end of the 7 days, the starting price of the token is determined by how many funds are in the pool, right? So it basically is a no rush type of investment where everyone gets in equally. And so the way we explain this to founders is that if you are a founder or a project that doesn't really have distribution, or you don't have an existing community that really cares about like fair access, and you just want instant visibility on Solana, which is what the bonding curve gets you. We're working with Meteora, which is an incredible team. They've been super, super helpful. And so the bonding curve is instantly discoverable everywhere. Jupiter, trading bots, Trojan, you name it, right? So that's instant visibility. But it comes at the detriment of like the next investor pays more for less than the one before him, right? So if you have existing distribution and you care like that everyone gets in at a fair price, and you have a base of people that are eager to invest, then we advise for the pro rata at least. And that's also what we're doing for our own fundraiser. Because in our mind, it leads to more sustainable base of holders from the get-go, because you don't have this um, speculation from the very instant. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. The Launchpad space is extremely competitive. Right now you have Believe, you have Launch Labs from Radium, you have BonkFun, which is like a fork of Launch Labs, I think. You got you got Pump Fun. You got a bunch of different competitors who are trying to do similar things. Or like you also have MetaDAO trying to like there was a Mountain Capital raised a bunch of money through there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of competitors for Launchpads. When did you have this idea to start yours? And then when did you start like deciding like, yes, we'll go full force on this and, spend a lot of time working on this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in I was like investing in the AI crypto meta in like Q4 of last year, and I kind of was amazed to see how these like small, scrappy startup teams had got so much interest in their projects, in their tokens, and they managed to fund like really cool open source initiatives like AI16Z. I also was following ARC quite closely, and I think that really kind of like pilled me like really hard on crypto and blockchain as a means for making fundraising easier. And so then I was talking a lot about that with my co-founder, who's like a AI master's student and spends his time thinking about AI. Basically, we sometimes joke that he is an AI, which is not. He's human, but we joke about that. And so I was talking to him, and he was working on this open source reinforcement learning project, which is basically a framework that you can use to train agents to be better at whatever they're trained to do through a method called reasoning. And we decided to launch a token on PumpFun and see what would happen, basically. And this led to a crazy series of events where we got a lot of interest in the project, a lot of investors, a lot of people that were clamoring for the moon and like so forth. And but the launch mechanism Pump Fund just didn't it didn't make sense for our kind of project, right? We didn't buy supply at the start. We had some supply, but it was put away investing because we're told like by the investors that you have to put the tokens investing or else we're going to sell and your project's going to die, right? So we're like, oh shit, fuck, okay, let's put it investing. That felt like a really fragmented process. It was like you launch a token in one place, then you have to put in an investing contract elsewhere. There was no education around that. So Pump Fund clearly seemed like a meme coin launchpad at the time. But we saw how much interest there was in the project. And we saw that there was a lot of attention around it, that suddenly people were asking questions about reinforcement learning and what it means and so forth. And eventually we saw like the interest diminish as the market came down. Basically, like Trump got in office, tariffs started being announced and everything collapsed. We still had tokens investing. We vowed not to sell our tokens because we're going to go down with our ship, basically. And there's a really good tweet that Shaw from AI16Z put out about the whole like fair launch meta and how this is kind of the case with a lot of founders that launch tokens for legitimate projects via a fair launch mechanism. They don't get enough tokens to really incentivize them to work long term. They have to somehow convert those tokens into cash, which is like you sell on the open market, your chart starts dumping and your holders start crying, basically. And there's not really this understanding that you're selling funds in order to fund your business, in order to make sure that it can sustainably last in the long term, right? So that was like a really disjointed launch experience for what we still see as like really good tech. And I say that as a joke, but also in reality. And so that whole experience, one night we were like up late talking and we're like, why is there no better fundraising platform for serious projects that are doing something cool, that see the utility in having a token integrated in their project and want to raise funding in a way that's sustainable for the business and also sustainable for the holders that are investing in it. And we kind of joked around. We're like, what if we verified developers using their GitHub stars and how many stars they have. Because at the time, everyone was like, "Oh my God, this project has this many stars," and everyone had a chart on their GitHub with the growth of the number of stars. That was like the whole thing, right? So it was sort of like, again, this like riff of a thought, and sometimes like the really good ideas, they come in that kind of form. And then we're like, this sounds really cool. Like, we would use this product. We wish we could have used this project or this product. And let's go and build it. And this was like late February, I think, that we decided to start working on it. And along the way, we got in touch with Meteora, it's just been a really pleasure of a team to work with. At the time, they didn't have the dynamic bonding curve. So we're using the DLMM, which transitions into an AMM for the bonding curve raise model, and then we're using their Alpha Vault in like a new way to do the pro rata sale. So yeah, it's been about 4 months. Along the way, we saw Believe go live, which in our mind is a really cool initiative and super cool experiment in bringing more Web 2 founders into the space. I think that's really where the big unlock is happening for the entire space as a whole and for their project as well. And I think the other launchpads, like, we don't really feel like we're competing with them because they are more focused on memes and less so on like real builders, and don't really have the tooling to make it work for real builders. I think the Believe mechanism is interesting, but I will say that I don't think that having the money that you're raising attached to how much attention you're getting is a sustainable long-term vehicle for a real startup or a real business. I think it incentivizes founders to think more about like, how can I get more attention for my token than necessarily like, what can I build to solve real problems? And I think there's been a few like standout cases from Believe, where like the founders are building something really, really cool. Like Kled, for example, I think that the project's super interesting. I mean, you have a token yourself. I think the work you're doing here is also super important. But I don't know. And obviously there's many sides to this coin, right? But I don't know if that is really an attractive model for founders long term. And we've even had a few founders that have launched on Believe reach out to us and be interested in maybe relaunching their token or finding a way to launch a project with us, because they just kind of saw how, like, you don't get supply control, which is a big thing, right? So you have not that many tokens, and then the funds that you're raising are dependent on how much attention you're creating, right?
Yeah.
So I
it's
think
a huge issue with Believe. That like you said, it's tied to attention, and you don't get any supply. And like I want to go back to what you said earlier, that you don't really feel like you're competing with the other launch pads, and I'd agree with you there. Like, what you're building is significantly different to Pump Fun and Radium's Launch Labs, and also to Believe. It's quite different because you're, especially with the pro rata raise, where you're putting in stable coins like ahead of time before you get the tokens, and it's not really trading. There's no price discovery until the token actually goes live. Like, that's really really interesting and significantly different. The biggest thing that I see Believe doing really well, that I want to see other launchpads focus in on more, is attracting new builders. Because that's the most important thing. Like, we need to get interesting builders, and Believe has done that exclusively through their awesome network. Because of Nikita is how Dupe got launched on there. The Dupe founder saw Nikita posting about it, and he was like, "Oh, what's this? Let me try it out." And a couple months later, they have a really cool token integration integrated into a business with over 1 million monthly active users and doing millions in revenue. And that's what's exciting the holders. The holders are like, "Man, this is a cool product, and I want to be a part of this." And that's what's special about these ICM things to me. So to give the traders interesting projects to trade, is going to be the key here, because we don't need a bunch of like random SaaS like products that don't need a token launching. Believa's done that super well though. They have like probably over 100 projects that have actual builders like building a cash flow generating project behind it. And you said that you're focused on that too. You're doing outreach to other founders. So tell me more about that process and how you think about that kind of aspect of your Launchpad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think to comment on that, that's something that I definitely want to commend the Believe team on. And I think it's really impressive that they've managed to pull this new talent into a space that is also quite riddled with stigma. I'm sure you've experienced this. I mean, any builder in crypto has probably experienced this at some point, that you tell someone that you're building something in crypto and they kind of like raise their eyebrows and they're like, and I think the fact that they've managed to bring on like real talent and like seriously cracked people building cool things, I think like I said, I think that's the biggest achievement that they've managed to do, which is really cool. And that's the thing that I also spend all my time thinking about, is how can we convince really talented founders with great ideas to choose an alternative form of raising capital, because that's kind of what it's fundamentally about, right? I think there's like different archetypes. I think there's the classic, I don't want to say vibe coder, but I want to maybe like the indie hacker or the independent builder. There's also a lot of really just crack devs that have incredibly innovative ideas and don't have traditional pathways to capital. So maybe they're not linked to a VC firm, or they don't have a network of angels that can invest in them, but they do have something really interesting they're working on. There's also an incredible amount of talent in developing countries. I've been speaking to devs from Nigeria, from India, and like the ideas that they have are really, really good. And I think live in a world that's kind of dominated by Western culture, and like, oh yeah, the best devs and best projects are coming out of SF or New York, or mostly SF in New York actually. And I'm just like, I kind of sometimes think, why is that? There are really, really talented people from building things from all over the world. Why is there so much capital concentrated in these like two sides of the U.S. coast? So yeah, we're trying to democratize that in a sense, and give everyone that has a track record of building something amazing like the chance to raise. And
Yeah,
the
that's super.
outbound.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, just that the ways we're doing outreach are like really varied. So there's like a lot of direct outbound, which is like visiting hackathons, coding schools, like builder houses. We speak to a lot of like incubators, accelerators. We also speak to angels and people that are close to early stage founders, because maybe they're cutting a small check and then see that, the most of the round is best raised on chain. There's a lot of different ways to approach this. And there's the outbound side. And then the thing that I'm really excited about is like the inbound. So like, how can we create content and run like online contests and like build our X in a way that's really speaking to the persona that we believe should raise with us. So
Yeah,
I've got a really cracked designer who's like now discovering AI generated videos. We put out one like a couple days ago, we call it the good tech, bad tech competition. So you submit your GitHub, it ranks you, and then there's like cash prizes on a leaderboard. So we're also trying to do like fun stuff like that to bring in devs.
that's awesome. One of the biggest things that I'm thinking about is that the legal aspect of all this. So what you described sounds kind of like ICOs back in 2017. So we've come full circle, it sounds like. 8 years later, we're back at ICOs, where people put up cash for a business idea that somehow the traders hope will that the money comes from that comes from the business succeeding goes back to the token holders somehow. And there's like a big legal gray area about this. And now with Trump in office and like a more crypto friendly SEC, people are hoping like, oh, crime is legal and like we don't have to worry about any of those past laws.
Yeah.
Some people are still worried and treading carefully. Like Believe is treading pretty carefully, and their advice to people is, you know, market this as a meme coin. It's nothing more than that. But then all the builders are actually trying to put more value in it in a legal way. So there's like all this, they have to tread very carefully, the builders. And no one's really sure how to integrate it like legally or what they can and can't say. Some people have like good legal teams they can go to and they can get advice on their tokenomic structure and be advised that way. But a lot of people are kind of flying blind and they're not sure what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do and how they're allowed to speak about it and how they're not allowed to. And you as a Launchpad, do you have any opinion on that of like, you know, do you guys feel any obligation to kind of guide founders from a legal perspective of like, hey, here's how you should talk about your token? Are you guys just simply infrastructure that you think let the people do whatever they're going to do with the infrastructure?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think a big disconnect that I see right now in the Launchpad space is like tooling for founders. And I listened to a show you did with Ultra, and we also had some chats one-on-one, and he spoke about the idea of like startup tooling as part of the Launchpad, whether that's like legal formation or then I started thinking about legal guidance. You know, we've gone through the whole process to like incorporate and have a legal structure that makes sense for a token holding entity. And I think there's definitely not enough education or tooling for that on Solana. The company that Ultra mentioned is called Autoco, OTOCO, which allows you to easily set up like a Wyoming or Delaware company. And so we're looking at integrating tools like that actually in the raising process so that you can incorporate and raise in like 7 clicks, right? Like, isn't that kind of the dream of a builder, you know?
Yes, that is the dream. That's amazing. I love that you're going in that direction.
Yeah. I think it's super important. And then I think the follow-up legal guidance is also really important, that people don't get tripped up and have the SEC come and knocking on their door. I think right now there's like this sort of period in time that's quite unique to the current administration where, you know, all cases are being dropped and there's definitely way less scrutiny than there would have been under the previous administration. You know, we can only speculate on where things are going, but I think that founders should definitely be well aware on what's happening before they launch a token, because the moment you start communicating that it's a secure, like in the way that it would be considered a security, you can run into serious legal issues. So I think the Believe team also calling these things out in advance is really good for the builders that are launching there. Yeah,
I think it's important to treat these things like from the founder's perspective, to speak about them like a meme coin and whatnot, and that's just to cover their own ass. But I think the traders interpret this as like, yeah, they're covering their own ass, but they are trying to drive like value back to the token and kind of make it like a quasi stock. I think that's the ultimate like goal that traders want and what the market wants, because it's what I want and it's what I've seen people talk about these Believe coins as if they were like tokenized equity, because they want the token to benefit if the business does well. Like that's the ultimate goal. You know, we don't want the business to go become like doing 100 million in revenue and the token to be at 20 mil at 5 mil market cap. You know, we think if the business is doing a crap load of revenue, that the token would be doing very well alongside it. And in that way, I'm thinking deeply about like, how can we structure the tokens in such a way so that happens and it's not just a meme coin? Because if you just have a token, it doesn't necessarily do anything. It won't appreciate in price until it's actually tied into the business somehow.
Yeah.
Dupe has done an interesting way of this where they have like, special sales that go on, and they have like a point system that kind of on the back end Dupe tokens are used, but in the front end the user just sees that they get some points, and they can get like special gifts from the website when they use it. So it's kind of it's an adoption flywheel for them, so that users use their product more and get rewarded for it, and then the token also gets some value. And so like that's really interesting to me. But so many of these token founders have no idea how to do that, especially if they're coming from Web 2. So they need a lot of hand holding in that way. They need like a framework to get guidance on how they can really get that value to their token and kind of integrate the two, while also not crossing any securities boundaries. Like that's the goal, is to marry the business and the token without drawing any scrutiny from the SEC. So like, do you have any opinions on the marrying of the token and business, of like what that looks like in its ideal form, maybe in like a broad thing, or is it really specific to each business in your mind?
So I'm really glad you asked this question because I also spent a lot of time thinking about that. I think the coolest thing about having a token as like in the ecosystem of your business is that you not only have a publicly tradable asset that is a like it. This is where it gets complicated. Okay, so I think the interesting thing is that you have a like publicly tradable asset that is getting you visibility on your project, right? It's something that people can speculate on and make money or lose money on, of course. But it's also a piece of software, and that's the most interesting part, is that it's not just this thing that's related to the performance of your company, which I'll get to in a sec on how I think that should be, but it's also something you can integrate into your product, right? And so like token gating features is something that almost works for every single app or business, right? Having a loyalty program where you earn points in the token for completing certain actions, that's also a pretty like universal template that you can apply to any business. And then I think where it gets really interesting, where we're probably going to start to see things go, is that you see token holders integrated with tools like Stripe, which are starting to collect on-chain payments and are investing really heavily in on-chain payments, i.e. with the acquisition of Privy. We're going to get to this point where you hold a certain amount of tokens of a business, and that entitles you to a certain amount of dividends, much like you would hold a certain amount of shares in a company, and that would entitle you to a certain number of dividends, right? I think right now, like, we're really trying to push the envelope here, and I think good businesses like Believe as well and other Launchpads, they're pushing the envelope in a way that might not be like compliant in every single way, but if you try to build a compliant business in crypto 100%, you're never going to get from 0 to 1. And I think that's like a harsh reality. If you're trying to get the licenses and disclosures for every single jurisdiction, it's impossible unless you're going to raise, tens and tens of millions in order to build your business, which that's not how scrappy startups work, right?
Even if you did raise tens of millions of dollars for your thing, there's still no way that like Pump Fund, for example, one of the best products in crypto in recent years, I think that was done in kind of a legal gray area. There's just no laws about like what that means. So it's not illegal, but it's also not really legal. Like, at least as far as I understand, there's a lot of gray area there. Just like what we're doing has a lot of gray area, and what all these founders are doing. Like what I'm doing with launching my token, I think there's a lot of gray area about it. And that's where crypto has historically operated. Like when Bitcoin came out, there was no laws for it. Only like many years later did it become treated as property under the law, for example. So like, that's what I love about crypto too, how like we just push the envelope. And I really appreciate that about what you guys are doing and about what Ben is doing with Believe. And I will say on Believe, like their infrastructure is not impressive at all. Their infrastructure is like so lacking. But they've seen so much success because of that founder like mindset, where they're really focused on like the message, and the messaging to founders has been top tier. Like Pump Fund could never compete with that because they just simply haven't tried. I think maybe they could have if they like really put eggs in that basket. But yeah, Ben and his team like just sold the message to founders that like this is a new way to fundraise, and that's really exciting to people. But the infrastructure is pretty boring. Like it's not customizable. You can't launch with your own supply of tokens and stuff. And I actually spoke with the Meteora team that's working with Believe on these issues, and they said they're going to fix it really soon. So there is change coming, and there's a lot of competition. You know, there's you coming for them too. Like if they don't get their shit together, you're gonna eat their lunch, I think. You know, and if they don't get, and if they get their shit together, they might eat your lunch. So it's a very competitive space, I think, to get these eyeballs of these new founders. But I also like what you were saying earlier, where you're not just focused on SF and New York. Like you're focused on these other founders who maybe you can reach them before Believe reaches them. You know, and then you guys aren't really competing, but you're going after different sets of founders. It's super exciting, and I'm really glad you came on the show to talk about Star, and like I want to get into more details about it. Kind of rambling, but what else do you want to talk about while we're here?
What else do I want to talk about? I think the point that you mentioned about competition is like quite interesting because I've spoken to quite a few, like I want to say people with real influence. Not KOLs, because I think that term gets a lot of flack. And the answer is pretty universal, right? It's like, this model sounds really cool. It seems like you're offering a lot more tooling. What's your pipeline of founders, right? And then you like zoom out and think about that a little bit. And you're like, okay, there's one place where founders can currently go to launch a token. But there's so many founders that haven't been onboarded to Web3 yet, right? And so I think what Believe is doing is they're making the market bigger, and we're jumping in to do the same thing. And there's like worldwide now, there's millions and millions of founders that are starting to build products because they're empowered to do so, right? Both from a culture perspective as from a tech perspective. I was like, traditionally I've been more of a designer, marketeer than a developer. But in the last year and a half, now that I got my hands on Cursor, I can build anything. Most of the Star platform I put together with our designer, and the really heavy lifting was done by our developer and the Meteora tech, right? So this trend, and this is something I also say to our investors, is like the rate of creation is accelerating so fast, and it's only natural that the rate of capital will need to keep up, right? So if you look across the board, like in almost every continent, there's just this whole new wave of like indie hackers, vibe coders, whatever you want to call them, that are building stuff and aren't looking to go and maybe raise 30-40 million in VC to build a unicorn or a decacorn or whatever. They're building like a healthy business that does decent numbers but isn't a fit for traditional venture capital. Where are they going to go for funding, right? On-chain is the only real viable answer to that. So yeah, we're competing with Believe, who has a head start and a great network, but we also think the market's so big that there's room for multiple founder-focused launchpads in this space. And I think where maybe Believe isn't, I think that in a degree they also have a broader vision. Like they're looking at nonprofits, maybe musicians, artists. We're really laser focused on technical founders, and that's our beachhead going into this market. So yeah, it's on, Ben.
Yeah, that's I think I really agree with you there, that the market is so huge and there's definitely room for multiple founders, especially because like a big part of this is outreach and getting eyeballs of the founders and actually getting them interested. And I think a big part of getting them interested is holding their hand a bit more, maybe hopping on a call and saying, hey, this is how it's going to impact your business, or making really great content about how your platform is going to serve them in concrete ways. Because I think that's what's missing. Like a founder might be like, yeah, I have a cool idea for a startup and I don't want to raise VC because that sucks. But this Believe thing, it doesn't make sense to me. It's kind of weird. It's crypto. And like, even if they do understand crypto, a lot of them still don't like believe because of the fact that you can't, customize things, or a lot of reasons, or they just don't understand where the token would play into their business. And I think that kind of messaging is going to be really important. There are some people working on this, like, me with this podcast. There's Believe Capital, there's Believe University. I don't know how much other people are doing, but like the Believe team's not doing a ton on this front.
I love that, by the way, like the whole idea that this company launched and created an ecosystem, and now there's like a podcast on the ecosystem specifically, and there's like Believe University and like a capital fund dedicated to that. Like, that's one of the things, not to interject, but I kind of love that about CT, that these things just pop up as a response to that.
Me too. I love it, and I'm just focused on this, and it's been fun for me to focus on, even while the world is going to war with each other and whatnot, and the markets are down. It's still fun. What excites you the most? Like, sorry, go ahead.
My question is, like, how do you look at like the ICM space carrying through what could be a world war? How do you feel about that?
Oh, dude, if it's actually a world war and like there's major powers getting involved, like, and I don't consider Iran a major power, if like China and the US go to war or something, like there's gonna be worse things to worry about. I'm gonna need like food in my basement and stuff, and like more bullets in my gun. So, like, it gets bad enough, and then I'm not worried. And if it's not that bad, then I think we recovered, because what excites me the most about internet capital markets stuff is that these are net new businesses and net new assets. It's not just the same crypto like circle jerk where we're all like farming DeFi tokens to dump on each other or something like that. These are net new revenues coming from dupe, for example, where the users don't give two fucks about crypto. They just want to buy their cool, cheaper like lamps and chairs and shit. And then some of that revenue goes to the dupe token because maybe the users want to buy the token to get discounts. Like, that's exciting to me. Or Cled, like, if they can manage to sell their data and get revenues from that, and then pay out people in Cled and like buy back the token and stuff, that is super interesting because it's decoupled from the crypto markets. If Bitcoin goes down, there's still like a floor on dupe because of the business operations of the company, is how I see it. Just the same with a stock. Like, you would buy Walmart if it was at a low enough point, because just the fundamentals of the business give it like a floor price where you say this is undervalued, objectively speaking. I think you can do the same thing with some of these ICM tokens that have good tokenomics. That's what's like super exciting to me, because it's just like, I love gambling, and I love gambling on like these startup coins. I want to believe in them. I want to like amplify their voices and stuff. So if to answer your question, if there's a world war and it's a serious one, I'm worried about other things, but if not, I'm very optimistic.
Great. Couple bullets, good to go.
yeah, I got my AR, I'm good.
You touched on tokenomics there for a second, and this is something I'm also interested to know more about from your perspective. Like, what do you think good tokenomics look like, both from an allocation to different pools, let's say, or different stakeholders, and then from a value accrual or integration spot?
Yeah, I'd say that, like, from a distribution perspective of like how should the TG happen, I have kind of no opinion, because I think it's so different for each team. Like, my token, I don't need to hold a bunch of the supply. I bought a bunch of it and I still hold it, but I don't like necessarily need that for my business plans for it. Like, I don't. But Dupe, for example, they need like 20% of their supply. They're aiming to get like 25% of the supply. So they kind of so it's different for every company, that part. But what I think it isn't different is that the universal necessity is that you need to have the business integrated with the token in terms of cash flows. Like, if you need to make the users want to buy the token somehow, or you need the revenues to go to the token somehow. Like, Hyperliquid is kind of a good example, in my opinion, because like a bunch of their revenue goes to buying back the token off the open market. So that kind of gives it like a floor where the price is always going to be supported at a certain price. And if you do the math, it's kind of like a dividend. And in terms of value that goes to the end holder, because everyone's token price, becomes slightly more valuable. And so you could pay that cash out via a dividend, or you can just buy the token and push everyone's assets up a little bit. It's like kind of like how a stock does a buyback instead of a dividend. It's a very similar cash distribution thing. And that piece has to be there in some form. You either need to make the users buy it, or you need to make the company buy it. And I think that's kind of the cleanest way to do it. But I'm still like getting the details down in my own mind of exactly like what that looks like in its optimal form. But my gut tells me it's something like that. Like the cash from the business has to go to the token holder somehow, and buybacks is a decent way to do that.
Yeah, spot on. I agree with all that, and I would also mention Hyperliquid as a really good use case. What do you know about revenue sharing tokens?
Not a lot. I think pretty much most people that I know like crypto apps sheer away from it because of the legal uncertainties about doing actual, like, if you call it revenue sharing, I think that's like a no-no. So that's why they say they don't call it anything. They just buy back the token, or like encourage people to buy the token, and it's the same effect, but you don't have the same, like, you're not promoting it in that same way. I think that makes a big difference in the eyes of the law.
So let's run a hypothetical. What if there was a Launchpad where you had to go through a questionnaire in order to certify that you are a competent investor, let's say? There's no fiscal requirements to how much you need to invest or how much you have invested. It's a qualifying questionnaire. And then you could participate in a private sale with 34 other investors, so 35 in total, where you can buy an asset that entitles you to direct share of revenue in a business, exactly like how a dividend works. I'm not going to say this Launchpad exists or will exist, because that would be giving away some secrets. But how would you look at a model like that?
That sounds pretty interesting, because it's kind of like, it's more straightforward of a way to do what we're trying to do, I think, here. Or it's more straightforward. And especially if it becomes tokenized afterward and then it can trade on the open market, like upon TGE, that's like also where a lot of the fun lies. Because for like Echo, for example, are you familiar with that platform?
Mm-hmm.
So that one, you can like invest, but then the token, you still have to wait for the TGE and like upon whenever the project does it or doesn't do it. And so you still just get like, it's more vanilla than what I want. I want something that's faster to TGE and faster to price discovery. So I'd be very excited for that. I think it sounds great. Yeah.
Cool.
I'd definitely mess with that.
Noted. What's your take on I'll couple rapid fire questions here, because I talk about these things a lot, and be curious to get your take. So capped or uncapped sales?
Uncapped. I don't see why not. Why? Yeah.
Uncapped.
Cap it.
Why not?
Why not cap? Let the degen money flow,
And uncapped is better, you think?
Oh, okay. So the benefit of cap is that it makes some FOMO there, so people want to get in before the cap happens. The benefit of uncapped is that it has hypothetically like higher ceiling. So I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword. I'd say let the founder decide, and because I think it's better in certain scenarios. If someone can generate a shitload of hype, let's say like Kobe, if he was to launch his own token on this platform, he should do uncapped, because I don't think there's a way that Kobe could know how much like interest he could generate, and so he'd better let the market decide. But someone like me, I don't have a huge audience. I should just cap it, because like I know it won't be more than, like, I could cap it at a high number. It probably won't be more than like 200K. But then if it reaches 175, that last 25K people might be kind of FOMOing into it, so that would generate more attention.
Got it. Yeah, that's good thoughts. Okay, 7-day sales or shorter or longer?
Say same thing. Just let the founder decide, because I don't know.
What would you do?
I'd do longer, because I feel like it gives me more time to like talk about my vision and to reach more people.
Do you know how long the Ethereum sale was?
I don't remember. No, I was
42
too young.
days.
It was 42 days, huh?
Yeah. I was too young as well. I didn't participate in it.
But you know the
But
history.
I've studied the history exactly. 42 days. It's pretty long. I asked this because we had quite a bit of feedback. People saying uncapped sales are bad. Uncapped equals max extraction along those lines. Which in a lot of ways I understand, because if a founder raises more money than they need, that doesn't necessarily make for a better investor founder relationship. They might make not wise use of that money. So fair enough.
That's very true.
But I got feedback that our 7-day sale model was long. And I was like, long? Like Kickstarters are a month, right?
This is
So
crypto, baby.
yeah, and then yeah.
I mean,
But I
in a
think a lot of
month,
it's like exit, like people want exit liquidity after they've bought. That's what it boils
yes.
down to. They're like, we want to create artificial scarcity so that when the TGE happens, there's still people left to buy because they didn't hear about it, or they missed out, or they didn't get in on time, whatever. So we want people to be able to buy as soon as the token launches, um, which is an interesting dilemma. And I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation around this. We're giving founders the option to choose all of these things: capped, uncapped, length of sale, and
Thank you,
hopefully we
because
can.
holy crap, it's so frustrating to me that unbelief. I feel like it cannot be this hard to have customizability, but it's been out for like, a month and a half or 2 months now, and it's still like there you only have the vanilla, like you get the 2% volume fee, you launch with none of your own supply, and like it's instant and all that stuff. I think what what Believe is doing is they're changing that. They're giving people customizability, and I think that's something that like Radium also has a leg up on Believe currently, is that they have more customizability. And if you guys give people all the tools to customize, the market will figure it out. Like if you attract founders and give them, your advice, maybe that's awesome, but like let them make their own mistakes, because that's, I think, ultimately how we get to the source of truth of what the best model is, and it's going to be different for each product too. Like if you're launching an AI, like an AI 16Z, he might have needed something different than if like Pump Fun was launching. It just it's too different to say to give one cookie cutter model.
Yeah. I fully agree, and I'd love for Star to be like almost like an SDK of sorts, where the degree of customizability, composability, and like integration possibilities are so endless that you can, I wrote this down today, you can raise your way, kind of like McDonald's.
Yeah,
Like I think that would be so cool. And like we've also been thinking about like how can you maybe build an ecosystem where other builders could build apps on top of the platform, where maybe like someone's built a legal app that easily allows you to incorporate, and it would just be a click to add that app to your raise. Or maybe it's like someone's built the perfect app to keep token holders updated on your user metrics, right? Or your like your key business metrics, right? Like monthly active users, MRR, etc.
yeah, that
So I
would
think
go
that
crazy.
that
Like
level
if
of
people could
composability.
see, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
If people could see like the monthly actives and the revenue that these companies were making, I think it the traders would love it. I'm not sure the builders would, because you're kind of like like a lot of these guys are not making revenue, or they don't have many users because they're more of in the idea / building stage, which is fine. But for something like Dupe, it's like exciting. People talk about the revenue and the user numbers because it's like a selling point of like, yeah, you want to buy this token because there's real shit behind it. And so I think having that kind of like stuff in there would be cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these days it's like the calling card of a startup. I've got X MRR, I've got X MAU, I've even seen founders message it on Hinge, like just screenshots of founders being like, "Hey babe, like want to go for coffee? I have 7K MRR," like stuff like that. So it's also making its way into the culture, which is funny. But I think
Yeah.
that kind of transparency is also super important for investors and holders, like that they can see those numbers in the same place that they're buying. And this is what really frustrated me with like the whole pump experience, is that like you set up a token, and then in order to put it in vesting, which is almost like a must for any serious project, you have to go to another platform and go through this process where if you've just launched a token, that is the most stressful experience ever, to figure out how to do on-chain vesting. And like that's not Web 2 friendly. That's not going to bring new people into the space. So like part of our onboarding flow, there's a step where you basically customize your on-chain vesting, and as your token launches, those vesting contracts launch with it. So it's not hard to set up vesting from the get-go. You can click short-term, medium-term, long-term, or you can customize the whole table yourself. Because we want it to be super easy and also transparent, so that when holders come to your page for your project, like let's say they come to the Dashcoin page, they can see exactly what's vested and for how long and when it's getting unlocked. Because that's also a thing. Like I saw a lot of projects in the AI space that were like, yeah, we have stuff vested, and then you go to the vesting contract and it says cancelable by sender, which basically means at any point they can say like this contract's done, right? So it's like these kind of little things that I think are actually not that little that make the whole experience of like launching an on-chain fundraiser and investing in on-chain fundraisers like so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how little things have such a big impact. Like, Believe is really like it's like a bad Launchpad with an amazing message, honestly, because and that's the craziest part to me, is like how far their message has taken them. It's generated them millions, tens of millions of dollars in fees at this point, and so much interest and buzz on Twitter, and so much attention for them, when really like it's a crappy like Meteora like smart contract at the moment. It's pretty straightforward to build. Like you can build it in probably a couple hours if you have the know-how. But like, and that's what I'm noticing with you. Like your product sounds amazing from a technical perspective, and now the part that I think it's going to be really interesting is like how you get the messaging across and how you really sell founders to come to your platform. Because I think once you get the founders, the traders come and they get excited and they'll hype you up if they see that cool founders are coming and there's volume on your platform. And that sounds like it's one of your main focuses, to get those founders on.
Yeah, it's all distribution at this point, and we also see that the you're building a network, right? Like a marketplace, and you get this thing called the cold start problem, right? Where like you need founders to get investors, but you also need investors to get founders, right? And like that's how Airbnb was built, Uber, etc. And they all had their own approach to how they solve the cold start problem, but usually the problems are like either demand side or supply side, right? So it's like either, in our case, it's, as we're looking at it, it's either going to be investors or founders. Luckily, CT investors are so hyper vigilant of anything that gets launched that you put something good in front of them and they will find it, right?
Exactly.
So the problem for us is supply side. It's really just getting good founders. So all of the messaging, all of the marketing, all of the outreach is really just like super focused on bringing people on board and sharing that message that it is a platform where you can customize your raise, where you can raise USDC sustainably, and then that you get a token that you can integrate into your business.
How do you sell this to someone who's a Web 2 guy? Let's say there's like a Y Combinator guy out there who like didn't get in, but he has a cool idea. And then I go up to him and I'm like, hey buddy, here's why you should launch on Star.Fun.
I think the first thing I would say is you can raise money from anyone, anywhere in the world. So that's like the broadest, biggest unlock, is you don't need to go and pitch a specific VC firm or pitch a bunch of VCs. I think that's the first thing. Then the second thing is that you can do so in a way that is completely customizable. So you can decide what kind of raise is best for your business. And for different businesses, there'll be different needs, right? Like you have existing audience, you go for a pro rata sale. You don't, you're looking for wide distribution, you go for a bonding curve that instantly gets you everywhere on Solana, so you get the visibility that you need. And then lastly, and we touched on this earlier, like the idea of having a publicly tradable asset that also integrates with your product that's the future. Like you have this thing that people can speculate on, that it's like a marketing engine of its own, and you can integrate that into your product to create these like flywheels. Um, I I would be like I'm so pilled on this, so obviously I'm biased, but I think this is the way to launch a business in today's world.
There's also the amazing fact that I've heard after interviewing 35 plus Believe founders. I have noticed that one thing that everyone says is really cool is how the token kills apathy about the product. Like before, they might not get any feedback on their product, so they don't even know what's working and what's not, or like where the bugs are. But then when you launch a token, then you have token holders who buy like could be $50 for someone, but that's like a lot of money to him. So then he goes and tries out your app and it's like, hey Dev, you need to fix this and fix that. And it's like you have a power user that you got who even gave you money by giving you like by participating in your ecosystem. Like that is a crazy unlock. And I think a lot of these startups kind of die in apathy where no one's giving them feedback and the founder loses hope because they're like, when no one's even using my product, no one cares, like I can just easily forget about this and then there's no repercussions. But with these, it's like you have holders trying to keep you accountable, trying to make sure you're always building, giving you feedback for what you're building. It's so unique, and there's a double-edged sword to it because sometimes you want to abandon a project but you're stuck.
Yeah, I think also there's a degree of like that the timelines and expectations of today's Web3 investors don't always line up with the actual time it takes to build a business and launch it. And like I think the memes around Ben are so funny. Like they're like, he put out this thing that was like World War III is going down and everyone's like Pasternak. Like it's like so true though, because like a lot of and this is something I noticed when we launched our project in February. Is like we're building like deep tech basically, right? Like open source deep tech, and like people don't get that it takes time to incubate something like this, right? So the moment you're not posting something or even just shit posting, like interest dies down. And I think that's and I've had a bunch of conversations with also with the MetaDAO guys about this, where like they try to position themselves intentionally as like not, I guess they say like anti-degen in a way, like, and sometimes they wonder like, should we be more experimental? Should we be more, and then I had another founder from a different Launchpad on Ethereum who was like, I wonder if I'm degen enough, and so there's like this disconnect between like sophisticated traditional investors who like buy the Nasdaq or buy like an index fund and just sit on it for like 10 years and then are happy with whatever 8% yearly return. And then there's like the hyper speed Web3 investor that's like, if the project I invested in isn't posting 3 times a day, like I'm just I'm just full clipping, right? And so I think we also as a space, we need to move to this like new world where we're educating people on how long it actually takes to build something, because a lot of the expectations I think are unrealistic, and I think a lot of the flack that the Believe team has gotten is also like not really rightfully placed, because it takes a while to figure these things out and to launch something like new features, to do it in a way that's stable and that it works and you've battle tested it before it goes live. It takes time,
Yeah.
So,
100%.
Expectations.
Like anyone who's criticizing Ben and they'll be like, "Oh, he's so slow to ship. He's so slow to ship stuff." I'm like, "Well, then you go build a better Launchpad. You go try and be better than him. If it's so easy, like you're just talking shit on Twitter, like classic." What
Armchair
my
investors.
dream is, what'd you say?
Armchair investors.
Classic CT.
Yeah.
I love CT, but it's so toxic sometimes. One thing I would love to see is like if we get a really solid framework down and like a few really good use cases. Like let's say Dupe in like 2 years is still around and like they're business is doing well and their token has done well alongside of it as a result of their business doing well, I think it'd be like such an easy sell to some of these TradFi guys to be like, hey, here's the framework, here's how this works. Like, you can buy it. It's like buying, you just say like it's like buying a stock but on crypto. Like, not only can you get these random degens from all across the world, but you could get like, smart investors who do care about cash flows and PE ratios and more traditional metrics from China, from Thailand, from like all around the world. You can get them interested in these products, because you can say to them, hey, here's my product, here's my TAM, here's how I'm planning to go to market, and here's like how the cash flow goes back to the token. Like, do you want to buy it? It's just like you're pitching to a VC. I feel like that's the end goal here. I want to be able to buy dupe token and have faith in it that. And I keep harping on dupe, but I don't mean to put them too much on the spotlight. I just think they've done a really good job of that. And I want to be able to feel confident that when the business does well, the token will do well alongside it. I think if we can get that messaging clear to both founders and investors, like this is why I'm so excited about internet capital markets, and why I've started this podcast that's focused only on this, and like why I have my Twitter that's only talking about it. Like, that's sick to me.
Yeah, it's setting a new precedent for how we raise money and build businesses, and I think it's in line with the future that we're headed. And it's like a really vital experiment to make sure that we get there, and we get there in the right way. Like, there's a really interesting video that or talk that Akshay BD gave at Accelerate. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
I was in the front row, like clapping maniacally when it happened.
Oh, sick. Okay, great. Okay, so you saw it, like the whole issue about public market valuations, like skyrocketing since the 80s, like all the returns are basically being captured in private markets. Like, that's a real problem, right? Like, people with money, they want to be able to invest in somewhere where they can like reliably get returns and achieve. I love how he said it. He was like, you get time, right? That's the reason we invest, is we invest in something so that down the line we don't have to work as much, we get time, right? But like in a lot of today's mechanisms, that's just not really possible. And I think crypto presents that path forward. It's riddled with fucking landmines and like scams and all these horrible things. But I think the underlying technology of blockchain will allow us to get there. And I think this whole experiment of ICM, internet capital markets, is like a huge step forward to get to this like dream reality where, you can raise money on chain, your friend or your neighbor can invest in it, earn a return on it. It's done so in a compliant way. And like the flow of money is like the flow of water, basically.
Beautifully said, Adam. I have no notes.
Get me on
incredibly
stage.
Hyped. Yeah, dude. This is sick. This has been really fun, Adam. I really thank you for coming on and having a great conversation about internet capital markets. I have a couple more questions, and then I want to open it up to you if you have anything else you want to talk about. But like, when can I start to be a degen and buy launches on Star.Fun?
So that's a really good question. We are launching our own fundraiser to kick off the platform. It's starting tomorrow at 4 o'clock UTC, which would be 10 a.m. your time. That is our cold start ignition. And from there on out, projects are starting to be scheduled basically all of next week. So you'll see them pop up on the platform. And as of, that would be June 30th, fundraisers from other projects will be live.
That's kick-ass. Nice. Can you tell me a little bit about your project? How much are you guys raising?
Yeah, so we have a soft cap of $1 million and a hard cap of 2.5. And we're selling about 20% of token supply. So that would be 12.5 FTV at cap. And
how long is the raise? You said 7 days?
It's a 7-day pro rata sale. So during any of those days, you can contribute funds. You can also withdraw. And at the end of the 7 days, the starting price of the token is determined by how much money is in the pool. So it'd be 200 million tokens divided by how much money is in the pool.
That's sick. I'm very excited to take a look into that. Sounds awesome.
Yeah. Everything's live, like the info about the project, the like preview of the platform is live. You can go and peek around. There's also plenty of content on like how it works. You can explore the project page. Everything's is set up to go. My team is now doing last stability testing to make sure our fundraiser goes smoothly. And then, yeah, tomorrow we're off to the races.
Hell yeah. Sick. Is there anything you want to talk about before we wrap up? Anything we didn't touch on yet that you want to?
Yeah, I think we talked about the whole idea of like value accrual and token. I think like our own token, we're trying to set precedent for that in that way. So like the utility of Star is kind of multifaceted. So we'll have like staking pools where you can get rewards for completing certain actions, like referring users or referring other projects like founders. We have a buyback program. We call it the Star Support Fund, where a portion of trading fees will be going to buy back the token. And then we'll also have token gated features for users that hold a certain amount of Star to get access to like premium analytics, i.e. like Cookie, for example, and also these private sales that I told you about earlier. Those will also be token gated.
Sick. I love it. Guys are shipping the flywheel before Ben. Classic.
We heard the people and we're answering.
Love it. Love to see that you guys are shipping. Well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on. I think this was a really fun conversation.
Yeah, pleasure, Nick. Thank you for doing this. I think the ICM space needs you as much as you need the ICM space.
I hope so, because I need the ICM space, bro. My bags are down bad these last few days. No, it's all good. I love this. This is my favorite place. I wouldn't be anywhere else. I love crypto. I love Twitter. I love internet capital markets. I love having contrarian ideas. I'm so enwrapped in this stuff. It's like so fun for me. So I'm blessed that I get to be able to do this and focus on this. But thank you for the kind words, Adam. I hope that ICM space appreciates my efforts.
It does.
To be a small part about this, pushing it forward and like having the conversation. I'm really excited for next week. After I'm going to go to permissionless in New York City. Hopefully, maybe you'll be there. But after that, I'm going to meet with an ex-SEC lawyer and get her on the show to talk about some stuff. So really excited for that one. That's going to be a sick episode.
Yeah, same. I saw that. I was like, that's going to be really, really cool. That's going to be really cool. If you go to permissionless and you see Ryan, say hi. Say hi for me.
I will. I will say hi to Ryan.